Hello, and welcome to the subject tonight is love, our my series of interviews with friends and buddies about my favorite topic, which is love. And my guest today is Paul Bennett, who is definitely a buddy and a homie. We go back a few years and did some deep places together. Welcome, Paul. Thank you for chatting with me this morning.
What a delight, Tom. What a delight.
So how do we know each other?
Well, we ran into each other. It would have been, I think, December of 2004.
2003, I think. Yeah.
2003 at Rising Phoenix, beautiful former retreat center in the Panhandle of Maryland, and we were doing a couples retreat with Joy and Lawrence. And I had just fallen in love with Carol Herndon, and it was our first big adventure together. And I walked into this room full of people, many of whom I still know.
Right, and they're still close to. Yeah, that was quite an experience, quite a time in our lives. You two were teenagers, as I recall. You were absolutely teenagers in love. It was such a delight to be in the presence of fresh love. Like that. Man, these folks are just off the love boat here.
Yeah, it was something in our mid-50s, and yeah, when we'd been together less than 6 months at that point. So yeah, and I remember we were just outside the door, had a hand on the door handle, and I realized I don't know any of these people in here, and I can be whoever I say I am when I walk through this door. And walking through a door with Carol was just like we'd never. In fact, when we got the pre-mailing for that retreat, it was the first time we'd seen ourselves sort of listed and announced as a couple.
Wow.
That we kind of looked at each other. Wow, we're a couple. Which exactly. We definitely were.
So that's where our friendship started, and that was and we'll probably cycle back around almost certainly to that later in this conversation, because the Carol piece of this love story of yours is a awfully critical one. But I also, for context for those who are watching or listening, you and I shortly were fellow members of a men's group, a group of men that met monthly to just share what was going on in our lives. That was a very sweet connection that we had over a number of years.
Yeah.
Probably another 6 years before I moved to New York. And then we had the privilege of serving on the board of Shalom Mountain Retreat Center together for a period of time. And we also still do serve on the board of the Center for Integral Wisdom. So our paths cross hither, thither, and yon, and now again.
It is
now again today. So,
yeah.
I'm very grateful for this opportunity. You and I have had a lot of deep and thoughtful conversations over the years, and especially on the topic of love. And in this conversation, I want to trace it back to the earliest notions in your life of love. Can you think of the earliest sense of love and loving that you have a memory of?
Well, I think my family.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I have a new computer. It wasn't recording. Let's start over. All right.
It says it's recording.
It is? All right. Well, I'll edit it. All right. I'll edit. Now I've screwed that up. It does say it's recording. Oh, I got it. But there's a button on, that's the thing. I've got the new computer, and there's a button here. But it says I'm not recording. All right. So we'll continue.
Yeah. I definitely grew up feeling loved in my family. I'm not sure we didn't. I don't think we frequently used that word,
Mm.
but my sense of belonging in my family was really unshakable. You know,
Mm.
so so it occurs more as absolutely for sure I belong here,
Mhm.
and that was true of my immediate family. It was true of the extended family that I would see mostly in Michigan in summers. That's where we mostly ran into cousins and my grandmother and and aunts and uncles and all those folks. And it was, yeah, there was a real sense that yes, I belong here.
And by here, it was belong here in the family, but
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's kind of one of the reasons that you've had the life that you've had, but you believe a sense that you belong on the planet or in this life. Is that,
Yeah, I would not have questioned that.
yeah.
And I went to the same grade school from nursery school through sixth grade. So, and a very progressive small school. And again, no question. Yeah, you belong here.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way love showed up um, before I hit those kind of crazy teenage years when you started to get a different idea of what this might all be about.
I imagine once you left that cocoon of elementary school where you belonged with, and the same building, the same classmates, the same teachers, and went out into the wild and woolly world in sixth or seventh grade, that might have been
Well,
a
yeah,
shift.
it was a big shift. However, it was a shift at seventh grade into a very small, uh, very selective prep school, where I joined a class of 25 people, 25 boys, and stayed with them for the next 6 years. So it wasn't the cozy kind of. And then of course we all hit puberty together, and so whole different kind of thing. Um, so yeah, there's a different kind of belonging. Again, no question. Yep, you're here. You're in this. And I also discovered at the first grading period, I had at the progressive grade school, I'd never received a grade. And we didn't do grades. We got a report at the end of the year, which I'm not sure I ever saw one of those. So at the end of the first grading period in seventh grade, I discovered I was the top of my class. And that became the role that I had amongst these 25 people, which eventually dwindled to 19 by the time we graduated. But that was who I was in this group. So that came as something of a shock and kind of a burden, actually, because I, for whatever reason, felt I had to stay there. That was who I was in this group, and I better keep doing it. So
I noticed that we keep coming back to belonging, and maybe the flavor of the belonging or the setting of the belonging keeps shifting. But in this conversation about love, belonging comes up for you. Is there? Can you talk to me a bit about um, how belonging and love manifested, or if they did? They're not synonyms, right?
mm,
Like Tom Robbins says, there's no such thing as a synonym. But they're definitely in the same word cloud in
yeah.
your experience. But so let's kind of see where the love, as you have come to know it over the years, how it transformed in that setting of the 25 boys in your prep school.
Hmm. Well, interestingly, though I had, I mean, I would have called almost all of them friends. Like, yeah, all of them friends, except there was one period where one of them, unaccountably, I've never known why, turned against me quite publicly. And I don't know why. But other than that, I would have considered them all friends and didn't, but I didn't really feel particularly close to them. As I look back, these were not, they were time consuming friendships, right? But not, we spent all that time together. We did things together. We played sports together. But I wouldn't call them in retrospect really close friendships.
Mm.
And in fact, none of them actually endured.
Hmm.
I've seen some of them since on occasion, but none of those friendships were like lifelong friendships. So was love present? I wouldn't say so really.
So belonging took on a kind of a less love-laced flavor
Yeah.
in that era in your life.
On the other hand, it was very different. For instance, when I grew up Catholic, so there were 2 times when I had to go off for a few days to the local parochial school for training for my first communion and for my confirmation. And those were tremendously traumatic experiences for me.
How so?
It was clear I did not belong there. And I was actually ill from the sense of not belonging there. I was really, because I was, tremendously spoiled in that regard. Where I was in my life, no credit, I belonged. And you plunked me in the neighborhood school and didn't know anybody. And there are a handful of us who go to other schools, but most of the people were with, go to that school. And they all know each other. And I don't know anybody. And it was, actually physically ill with dread.
You were in a sense, for the first time in your life, outside.
Yeah.
You were an outsider.
Yeah. Practically no time in my life up to then, or actually until I perhaps went away to college, that I was really an outsider.
Wow. So, so you became ill. Did you? How was communion? I mean, like, were you well trained for communion?
We got through it all. Yes.
Yeah.
Got through it all. Yeah. Yeah, but really having a sense of dread about being outside of the area where I knew I belonged. Tom, there is still one song at this point in my life. There is one song that I cannot hear without tears. And that is the song "Feels Like Home to Me."
Oh, right.
You know that song?
Oh, of course. Oh my God.
Raul Malo does a lot of people do it, but Raul Malo does a gorgeous
I don't know that
and
version.
it's like, yeah, that's it. And it is definitely tied to love at this point in my life.
Yeah. Feels like home. Yeah, I particularly love the backstory of that song, that Randy Newman wrote it with Bonnie Raitt in mind.
Oh,
and so if you can find a YouTube video of him playing piano for her singing it, it's like it'll tear your heart out. It's so gorgeous.
Oh my gosh, no, I haven't seen that. I'll look for that.
When I first moved to New York in 2010 to the Catskill Mountains, I felt so comfortable there. I was playing "Feels Like Home" over and over and over. It was exactly that. So home and love. You've spoken of your experience with the boys as a sense of belonging, but not love, as you have come to know it. How about with the faculty? Any were they similarly kind of with but distant, or was there any kind of heart connection there?
Well, there were actually two teachers that I felt very close to, and I think it was reciprocated. And one was a monk. This school was run by monks, and he did the theatrical productions, and I was completely stage struck. I mean, this is what I did from by the time I was about 13 till the time I bailed out of the theater at the age of maybe 23. So, boy, that doesn't sound like a long time, does it? But it was
Not in
intense.
retrospect, but that's a long time for a young'un.
But it was intense, and I so Father Stephen and I spent a lot of time together, and that was a very actually it was a more affectionate than I was comfortable with, actually. There was a time when I felt not quite sure how to handle this. And another teacher, a lay teacher, who then left, and I actually pursued that, continued that friendship somewhat after he left the school. But mostly, they were the teachers, and I was a student, and I did well, and I think they liked teaching me.
So in your teens, did you think about love and loving? I mean, was it a topic of yours?
I don't think so. I thought I started thinking about girls, and started thinking about sex, and did they like me, and did they, and there was we were all very Catholic. There was no sex, but there was a lot of thinking about sex in my experience, and so there was dating, and I'm trying to think, would I have said I was in love with anybody in that time? And looking back on it, I would say no, attracted, like to see her, would like to kiss her, would you like to, but would I have? I don't think I would have, even at the time, said, no, I'm head over heels in love with this one.
So let's roll this forward a bit. Let's take you to college. Where did you go to school?
I went to Yale.
And what was that like? All of a sudden, you're back in the world of. What was the gender ratio at Yale?
I graduated in the May of 1969, and in the fall of 1969, Yale admitted the first women to its.
So it was all men when you went.
All men, except for some graduate students. I actually had a very good friend, just a friend who was a graduate student, woman who was, but no, you had to import them or find them somewhere.
So what flavor did love have at Yale?
What flavor did love have at Yale? Well, at one point, actually in my senior year, it had I would say the first time I totally wholeheartedly fell in love with someone was actually a very young person who found her way into the dramatic group that I was running, and yes, fell head over heels in love with this girl. The song, "She was too young to fall in love and I was too young to know."
Oh,
that's it.
Oh, wow.
That was it. I think that yes, I think that is the first time I actually was with someone for a while that I was totally in love with, and absolutely brokenhearted when she dumped me.
When she dumped you. How long were you together?
Maybe 3 months. Yeah. things.
What did you learn about love in that relationship?
What did I learn about love in that relationship? Well, how painful it could be. That's for sure.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, well, it was very painful. Yeah, uh, yeah, I moped around. She dumped me just before sort of exams ended, and I hung around for a couple of weeks. Um, didn't make sense to go home and wait and come back for graduation. So I hung around and lost lots of weight, didn't eat, was miserable, was just classic heartsick.
Did you have a particularly good heartbreak song you went to?
Uh, no, I don't think I did. I don't think I did. Um, so
One of my early heartbreaks, I just dove into Joni Mitchell's Blue album, and everything on it made me weep. Everything.
uh,
River, Blue, My Old Man, the entire album just tore me up, and I just played it over and over.
I don't actually remember what I was playing. No, nothing nothing landed like that. Nothing has stayed as, oh, those were the songs I played then.
Let's move forward um, into post college and love. Like what did how did love transform in your 20s? What was new about
Well, in my
love?
20s, I came down from Yale and plunged into uh, a theater which was uh, radically expanding. Um, and we were in the process of opening a new theater. It was absolutely crazy. Um, and yeah, and then there was, having gone from a way too young woman, I fell in love with an actress who was several years older than I was, and definitely more um, mature, I guess,
Mhm.
and fell deeply in love with her, or at least passionately in love with her. And it was very troubling. She came and she went, and she um, and so and eventually went. um, it was very, very dramatic, um, very theatrical, um,
As is appropriate, it seems.
as it was appropriate. I mean, yes, you know, you're 21 years old. You fall in love with an actress who was maybe 20. I don't think she was more than 24, 25. She was quite unstable, um, and and we had a lovely time and terrible times, and yeah.
Mm.
So I got my heart broken again. There we go. And then uh, one evening after a cast party, I gave a ride to a woman who was working at that time, working in the box office at the theater, and uh, she and so about so maybe a year and a half, 2 years later, I married her.
What was her
Uh,
name?
her name was Laura.
Laura.
Yeah, and uh, so we did a number of. So had started. I'd gotten a real job for a while, but that didn't last, and then I started freelancing, which I did forever. But we got married, I guess, while I still had a real job. Um, you know, went someplace and they gave me a
That's
paycheck.
pretty much your last real job of your life, isn't it,
It was.
Paul?
It ended in 1973, and I
Yeah, and you didn't have a real job after that.
no, no.
No, just for our listeners and viewers, information that Paul worked, but as a freelance writer for really your whole career after.
Yeah, from
That.
73 till 2004 or so,
Yeah.
and I still do a little bit of it. But Uh, I have one client that just won't go away.
Yeah. Oh, darn.
Even though I retired, they don't go away.
So the texture of love in this stage of your life with Laura, like, how would you describe that?
Very, very passionate, very sexual, um, uh, and I think, looking back on it, I'd say we fell into the idea that once you had, gone through this dating thing, and where's it going to go, and what are we going to do, then it's handled.
Hmm.
Oh, that's handled. We got married, and we let it go cold, I guess.
Mm.
So that at one time when she had been wanting to move back to New York, she was from New York. She wanted to get into advertising, and so she was looking for work in New York, and we were figuring that, well, I could freelance from anywhere. So if she found work in New York, we'd move to New York. And she took the shuttle down one day and said, I'm definitely going to New York, and I don't want you to go with me.
Wow.
And, we just, it occurred to us that we weren't in love with anymore. We didn't have children or anything. So I couldn't really argue with it.
Yeah.
And as I look back on, of course, all the wonderful things that have happened to me since, I can't really argue with the results, but it does seem, in retrospect, terribly naive and careless that we just didn't pay attention.
Yeah. So say more about that. What kind of attention would love have called you to pay that you didn't pay?
I think it would have called us to notice when things were getting ordinary, and it would also, I think, have called us to open up some unfinished business from when we were first together. And I can't say that I don't really know what was going on with her, but I suspect that she was carrying some grudges and regrets from that kind of tumultuous time when we were sort of together, not together. I think if we had done anything like a Shalom retreat, a great deal of stuff would have come out.
Yeah, I bet. Tennis rackets would have been pounded.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
So, and how long were you together?
About 4 years altogether.
Any central takeaways on the topic of love? Like, are you smarter in some particular way? You pay attention as one. Any other learnings about love?
Pay attention and be prepared for I guess be prepared for the reality that it hasn't all been said, that you can operate on top of things and not find and go along just fine until it's not fine anymore. Yeah, and you can get very busy with your life and what you're doing, and not and just not be paying attention to the way things are shifting. And they do shift. It's great that they shift, really, actually. But a little while after Carol and I got married, just to jump ahead, and by contrast, Carol asked me one day, well, how's being married? And I said, well, it's kind of feeling just like, I think I said, just ordinary. And she was furious. She said, I did not get into this for ordinary. We are not having this be ordinary. And I think we live by that now. And certainly my very first marriage got very ordinary. Which a lot of people wouldn't have thought. I mean, she was working for a puppet company. I was managing the puppet company. I was doing freelance writing and trying to figure out a career. It didn't look ordinary, but as far as the marriage, it got to be, we're taking it for granted.
Yeah. So since your high school world, we've been talking primarily about love in the context of intimate relationship. Was love showing up in any other places, or is that really where the focus was for you in this late teens and then through the 20s era of your life?
That's where I would have. That's where I would have said it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's roll a little forward. Go ahead.
And the other side of my life at that point was the theater. In high school, in college, I was doing a lot of theater. Ended up running theatrical groups, which was not a good choice for me, because I really wanted to be acting. But those relationships, when you're up to something and it feels important, it feels it's heartfelt, it's all in, and those relationships, I wouldn't have called them love, but I would now.
You would now. What was the texture of those relationships? I mean, now in retrospect, you have the benefit of having a more refined view of love now.
The texture of the relationships was that we're really going for something. We're going for something that is, it's big, it's public, and we feel that it matters. We feel that this is not, we weren't putting on the, cute musicals. We were doing stuff with our heart in it. And whether that was a production of a Brecht play or an adaptation of, we did an adaptation, actually I did the adaptation of a collection of letters written by German soldiers who were trapped in Stalingrad as that German offensive fell apart. We did this evening of just guys reading these letters from people who knew they were going to die. They knew they were going to die there. It was clear there was no way out. So we were doing kind of tough stuff.
Tough stuff that mattered. So
it felt like it mattered. Yeah, we were not doing entertainment.
Right.
And doing it and trying to do it beautifully, with heart and with skill and like that. So, I do have, actually, in that, this is one of my favorite stories. In that production, there was a guy. He was older. He was an African American, and he'd been in the service. This was during the Vietnam War. So, and I don't know if he'd been in Vietnam, but he was a little older than we were, and he'd come back. And in this group of guys, it seemed like we were always teasing this guy. His name was Dwight. And we said, well, one day we were kind of in this group talking about the play, and he said, I got to say something. He said, you guys are always teasing me. Why are you always teasing me? And our director looked at him and said, Dwight, there's a reason why we all tease you. He said, what is it? He said, because if we told you how much we love you, you would fall right through that floor with
Oh,
embarrassment.
wow.
And it was true. It's like we had no way, group of guys, right?
Yeah.
Working together on this show, we had no way to say how beautiful this man was. So, yeah, and it was there, and when the director said it, it was like, oh yeah,
Oh, that's perfect.
yeah.
That explains
Everybody in the room knew it.
this explains my poker group. I've been playing poker with the same guys for the most part for 38 years, off and on.
Oh my God.
I met the earliest I met any of these guys was 75. Then I met another batch of them on the first day of law school in 76, and then the rest followed suit. That one of the newest guys in the group joined 22 years ago. Still called the new guy, and it's kind of classic male banter, and we never get to the I love you in that setting. Now we might, in, if we're having lunch or visiting each other's houses in a smaller setting, but in that setting where a group of 7 or 8 guys sitting around the table playing cards, it's like all abuse. It's all abuse, covering up the fact that we just love each other desperately. So
yeah, and I think that's I think that actually is a key moment in like what was going on. Because you could talk about falling in love with some girl, and you could talk about, missing her or whatever. Oh, by the way, oh gosh, I did skip a step there because during after my freshman year in high school, freshman year in college, I did fall in love with a British ballerina who happened to be living with my parents at the time. So it was kind of convenient and almost inevitable. So no, I really shouldn't say that the girl in New Haven was the first one. Right. This was the first one. Right. Definitely, we were sort of engaged in the way that if you're in college and she's going back to England and you have no idea how it could ever happen, we were kind of looking at that, and it didn't happen.
But let me reroute you back to what you were about to say, and that is, you can talk about these individual relationships, but something new and important came up at this time, and I had a sense you were heading in that community.
Yeah, but among the men, I don't think we could talk that way. Yeah, we could be friends, we could be very close and very much engaged about something, and the theater was a great thing to be engaged about. Because we're putting your heart into it. But it was not but I wouldn't have called it love, and I don't think that was what was so shocking when when this director said that to Dwight.
Right. No. So let's roll forward a bit. Let's get into your 30s. Things started to happen in your 30s.
So
big decade for you.
Yes, I turned 30 in this interregnum between my first and my second marriage, and so I was dating a lot, had some fairly long-term love affairs, or affairs at least, and really starting to feel myself as an independent guy, an adult. People starting to ask my opinion about things rather than me learning from other people how to do stuff. So kind of moved from one person to another, and often in that period, it was not usually their choice when it ended.
So you more often left than were left in that period, then, is what you're
I
saying?
more often left, yeah.
Which was a
Yeah.
reversal from your 20s. It sounded like you were left in your 20s.
Yeah. Well, yes, in my yeah. Yeah. So that engagement to the British dancer, yeah, we kind of said, well, this is probably not really going to happen. I can imagine how it was going to happen. And that was very sad, but it was kind of a mutual arrangement. And then the little girl broke my heart, and the actress broke my heart. And then my wife decided that there wasn't anything left. So she went off to New York. And so, yeah, I was but I think then in my late 20s or 30s, I was mostly the one leaving, with one notable exception. Got my heart broken again. Um, and then I started having lunches in the park with a woman I'd worked with for a while, who had just split up with her husband, and we had lunch in the park for a few months, I think, and got to know each other and became closer and closer, and then began a love affair that lasted 23 years.
And her name?
Her name was Bonnie Bunting.
Bonnie Bunting.
And she's the mother of my stepdaughter, one of my stepdaughters, and she's the grandmother of my grandchildren. Oh, and she, and for some reason, we saw each other for 3 years, and one day I realized that it would be a really smart move to ask her to marry me.
Sounds like you still think it was.
Yeah. And so we were married. We were in love for 23 years. We were married for 20 years.
Let's talk about that relationship a bit. On the theme of ordinary, paying attention to, is it getting ordinary? Was it ordinary? How did you navigate that?
Certainly not as consciously and attentively as I navigate my present marriage. But I guess since both of us had been married and divorced, we were, I think we certainly aware that it wasn't necessarily a done deal. And so, yeah, I think we were more attentive. Not we didn't do relationship workshops like the ones Carol and I lead now. Didn't do couples retreats. But I definitely think we were committed to each other in a way that was new to me, and partly because she was in the fundraising business, which I was in, which is how we met, and then decided that she had done that. She'd done what she wanted to do there. And I was able at that point, being a mensch, I was able to say, okay, you want to go back to graduate school? You want to become a speech language pathologist? Great. We can do that. So there was a sense of us being in it together. and in it for the long run, that that was very, very conscious and very, very awake.
Mm.
And that we were going to, and that we were choosing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the difference. No, I don't think it could have wound down the way my first marriage did.
Right, right. So as you look at those 23 years with Bonnie, what would you say the central learnings about love itself that you come away with from the relationship itself, not necessarily the end, because we'll get to that in a second.
Well, certainly love and sexuality in that marriage happened inside a absolutely, this is it. You know, we are together. We're going to be together. I never occurred to me that this was not, this was founded on any kind of an iffy promise. And given that it had taken 3 years to get around to deciding to get married, yeah, we knew each other very well, and we'd started by knowing each other. I had previously had something of a tendency to tumble into bed with somebody and then figure out, oh, what's going to happen now? It was not that way with Bonnie. Very cautious, and even after we were lovers, it was we're feeling out life in each other's orbits, and then deciding, yes, this is so we knew what we were choosing, really knew what we were choosing.
So if there were a central lesson to take away from this that you would pass on to a young fellow in his 30s, what would you say that young fellow should know about love?
Well, the great blessings of my, well, these two beautiful marriages is that not entirely by choice, we went into them very slowly. You know, very, very slowly. In no hurry to move ahead faster than was absolutely driven by our love for each other. Yeah, so there, and yeah, and to pay attention to that, I'm just, sex is a wonderful part of my marriage, both those marriages, and it wasn't the start. It was a heart connection.
So go slow and look for the heart connection.
Yeah.
And be in it with each other.
And I'm not claiming a lot of wisdom from that person, because I had been dumped before I started seeing Bonnie. The heartbreak before that was someone who had just separated with her husband, and we fell together, and we had this torrid affair, and then she needed to go elsewhere. Okay, done that. It was a classic rebound. So when I started paying attention to Bonnie, I said, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to be the rebound relationship. I'm doing that again. So it was a reaction, in fact, to the circumstance. Like, I am not going to hurry this, because this is looking really entrancing.
Right.
So yeah, 3 months of lunches in the park. was a pretty good way to go about that.
So let's roll ahead. Let's roll ahead to the way that ended. Why don't you tell us about the end of those 23 years?
So at the end of the in beginning of 2001, Bonnie was diagnosed with melanoma, a very peculiar melanoma which had advanced undetected. And so we went through 2 years of trying to save her life, and we didn't do it. And for those 2 years, for those 2 years, our life was completely oriented around medical treatments. Sometimes she would go through a treatment and then she'd be fine, and we got a lot in, actually. She was determined to go back to work when she could. And she had a really good spell in early 2002. And we went off to Europe, and we went to Italy, and we were in Venice and Cinque Terre, and we did it because things are good. Things are going well. We're between crises, and it was 2 years of crisis,
mm-hmm.
with some quiet.
What would you say? I want to make sure that we have enough time to talk about this last 15 years in some depth. But I do want to, this was an important transition with Bonnie's death, so important that you wrote a book called Loving Grief. And so, a book that I absolutely loved reading when you first published it, was that, a dozen years ago? And it's really one of the better books on grief I've ever read.
Thank you.
And can you kind of tell us what that process leading up to her death and then the process of writing the book taught you about love and loving?
Oh, boy. Well, taking care of her life was it was the complete thing, we were completely dedicated to that. We didn't have much choice about that.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly for 2 years, your life gets organized. Our lives got organized around medical treatments, recovering from medical treatments, and living our life and her life fully, to the extent that was allowed.
Mm.
Right. So love got expressed in the complete dedication to those two things.
Mm.
Getting her well and having her live the life that she wants in the meantime.
What did you learn about love in that total dedication?
Well, it was just the foundation of it.
Mm-hmm.
The foundation of everything. It ran through everything. It was unquestioned.
Mm-hmm.
I am for her surviving. I am for her having the life that she wants, when she's not in the hospital, when she's not recovering from chemotherapy or brain surgery, and that love gets expressed in everything.
Did something, as you wrote the book about grief, did something new happen in that process that had not yet occurred with relation to your understanding of love?
In grieving for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in grieving for her and in writing the book.
Yeah. Well, the book arose from people commenting on what I was saying about caring for her and losing her.
Mhm.
Um, People were saying, would you write this down? Would you do a panel discussion with me? Would you? Um, and I really felt like I was just saying what was so, but the main thing was that grief just occurred to me as just keeping on loving Bonnie.
That's the central line I remember from your book. If someone were to ask me, what did you take away from Paul's book on grief, I would say, oh, well, grief is just me loving someone who's no longer with me.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Love.
And it gets mixed up with a lot of other things, because often there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of regret, there's a lot of those, but once you strip those away, there's a couple of pieces I wrote called Grief Soup, that you don't really get grief, you get grief soup, and like chicken soup is not just chicken,
Right.
there's all these other things in it. But when you look at grief soup that you get, and you're also afraid, like, what's my future going to be like? Well, you've been afraid before, you know how to handle it. And maybe you're a regret about something you didn't do. Well, you've handled regret before, you know how to do regret. Then you can take all these little pieces out, and then you're left with just grief. And grief is just loving this person, and you don't have to do anything but love her.
Mm.
and 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 then you need to, having had a purpose, like a absolutely compelling purpose for the last 2 years, that drove everything you did,
Mm-hmm.
drove your plans, did your schedule, and then all of a sudden that's over. I on a number of occasions, I just stopped.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped in BWI airport one time. I dropped my aunt at a plane. I was walking through the airport, and I just stopped. There didn't seem to be any reason to go forward, no place to go. It happened a couple of times. Just stop, because there's the things that have given you meaning aren't there anymore.
Mm.
And so if you're looking for lessons, love gives you the meaning.
Mm.
Love gives you the meaning.
Yeah, I'm starting to hear that thread as you spoke about what was not spoken of as love, but was in retrospect almost certainly love with the theater group. You had meaning. You were working together for something.
Yeah.
You were in it together for something.
Yeah.
That had meaning. Meaning came up when you were talking about that too. I want to move to the Carol era.
Mm.
So you met Carol. Well, you met Carol again, as I recall. You had met her when you were what, 12?
No, I met her when I was 7. We were 17,
17.
and we'd been in a folk dancing group. And I don't know that we'd ever had a conversation. And then 38 years later, we were seated at the same table and started chatting. And she said, I think we've met before.
Oh my God. That's a great story.
And it was 5 months after Bonnie died. And without that kind of extraordinary connection and recognition, I doubt that I would have followed up on that meeting.
Yeah.
Can't imagine. Because after that, for instance, I said, we didn't have much time to talk. So I said, well, I'll give you a call. And she gave me her phone number. And when I went to pick up the phone, I could not do it. Couldn't bring myself to pick up the phone, because it felt like asking for a date. And it felt so wrong that I sent her an email.
Well, you're a writer.
Well, and by the way, the email vanished. It totally vanished. There is no trace of it. It left my computer. It's in the sent file. It is never showed up here.
Well,
So it was 6 weeks later before we reconnected,
so
which was also providential, I think.
this is rather than get too into the details of the love affair and how that unfolded, because it's as a sweet a story as it is. But what I think is remarkable, in at least what I know about what you and Carol have created, is that both of you have evolved your own notions of love in these last 15 years in ways that you hadn't in the previous half century of each of your lives. And I want to zero in on that.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that a bit.
Well, so one of our watchwords now, also in light of the last 15 years, is love is an experiment. Like we really went into this not knowing how to do this one. And very clear that our attraction for each other, our curiosity about each other, our admiration for each other was not it wasn't going to carry it, right? Just by itself. It was not going to be, we were not going to coast into this. And we got to design it. You know, it's like, yes, let's first of all, let's find people who have other ideas about this. You know, like our wonderful Joy and Lawrence, right, who led that retreat where we met.
For context of our viewers, Joy Davy and Lawrence Stibbards ran Shalom Mountain Retreat Center for its second 15-year period. And they have led couples retreats for years. They now lead the elders retreat at Shalom Mountain. And Lawrence was my first retreat leader, led me on my first mat trip, and I've been off and on have sought counsel from Lawrence over the years. So I totally get the go to Lawrence and Joy for how to navigate this. But others as well. You started looking for other couples that got that there was something about coupling.
Yeah, that there and yeah, I guess now I do look at this, you know, this being two together as really the place where you get to do the all out experiment of love. You know, so now we have amongst us these four offspring and the people they've married and fallen in love with, and these grandchildren, and it's clear that we love those people, clear that we love them like crazy. And it's not the same as living with this person you love every day. And by the way, we do it pretty much all day, because when we got together, we were both working out of the house. So we never in our life together have never gone off to separate places to work. And now we're retired and we do what we do that's not being retired, we do together. So we are like in each other's lives moment by moment throughout the day. And it's where you get to, it's where, now I'm thinking, it's where you get to take it to the next level. You're like, okay, this is fabulous. And now what? Is there more to loving this person and being in love with this person and sharing a life with this person that I haven't noticed yet?
Mm.
And as we have evolved, I noticed that a key part of loving is being for that other person,
Mm.
to evolve in that, what our dear friend Mark Gaffney would say, in a way that brings their unique gifts to the universe.
Mm. Let's slow that down. To be so for an involved advocate of your partner's realization and expression of their their uniqueness as a human.
Yeah.
Wow.
And here's the catch. The catch is that what they are is not a fixed thing.
Mm.
We are in love with the way they are. Okay? I absolutely love the way Carol is. And if I'm honest, I know that she is an evolving human being. I'm not necessarily for her evolving and changing from the way I love her being.
Mm.
Right?
Right.
There's a built-in tension there.
Yeah.
And I think it is often a limit on the way we love people.
Well, this is perfect. This because there's that song, "Don't Go Changing."
Yeah.
I love you just the way you are.
Yeah.
But really, the reality is,
Killer. It's a killer song. It's a horrible song.
Exactly. Exactly. But it speaks to that tension that you're talking about.
Absolutely. Don't go changing. No, don't. It's like, wait a minute. No, if I'm for you, if I am for you being your fullest self,
Yeah.
I got to be for you evolving and changing.
It's almost as though the lesson there of this time with Carol is to understand that you're in love with a process.
Yeah.
You're in love with a becoming, not a being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And as I look back to my life with Bonnie, it's probably the greatest gift I was able to, one of the greatest gifts I was able to give Bonnie was that she was able to make a big shift, and actually two big shifts in her life. And become a person, become a professional that was way outside of what she'd been before. And I was able to make that possible for her.
Mm.
So that I'm really left with.
Mm.
Now Carol is, and of course, Carol was a lawyer. Now she leads relationship workshops.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay. And yes, she wouldn't have done that without me.
Right.
And it doesn't seem that would have happened, because that's our way of having our love be a gift to other people.
Right. To go back to your theater days, you're doing something that matters.
Yeah.
Doing something together that matters. So one of the takeaways, if I were to summarize this conversation so far, is Paul gets it about love, that it's about belonging, but beyond that, it's about being in it with somebody, doing something that matters.
Yeah.
Does that land for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. As I look at the relationship work that you and Carol have done over the years, the level of commitment that you two have thrown in has been really into that project has been really awe-inspiring. And you've been steady with it. You've been consistently for this process, mattering to other folks in relationship for years now, and it's beautiful. this last piece, I do want to wrap up pretty soon, but this last piece, I don't want to finish without hearing, what's the newest thing you know about love?
Hmm.
What's the latest thing you've learned?
Well, I think the newest thing is that part about being for the evolution of this person.
Mm,
So our friend Mark defines love as a perception identification complex,
right.
which is so moving. It's Carol crazy. I rephrase that to first, it's seeing with unflinching eyes. I
Mhm.
am willing to see everything there is for me to see about you and not look away,
Mm,
not pretend that I didn't notice that. The second part is to hold you not as your faults or things I don't like about you or things I do like about you, but as your unique self. It's the only way really to fully say this
mm,
is that you I I hold you to be this magnificent expression of the universe and of divinity who is evolving.
mhm,
And the third part, which I think Mark maybe didn't point to, is this part of I am for you evolving. I am for you bringing your unique gifts to the
mm,
world. And those three things together, you can love anybody.
mm.
You can bring that to any human being,
Not just your partner.
not just your partner.
So let's say them again. What's the first one?
Seeing,
Unflinching eyes.
seeing you with unflinching eyes, not pretending, not looking away.
Right.
Second, holding you to be not all that stuff that I see, but holding you to be this unique expression of humanity, of divinity. If you see that part of the oneness, part of what is evolving out of the universe, this universal consciousness.
Right.
And third, to be for your unique gifts being
Mm.
manifest in the world,
Beautiful. Beautiful.
becoming real. And you see, that's and as honestly as I look, that's perhaps a place where I don't look at my love for Carol,
Mm.
because I can look beautifully at, ah, isn't she marvelous? And then I can work on not looking away from things I don't like about her or what she does, or but that third part, am I really 100% for her evolution, which she may not be.
Mm.
See, by the way, when you turn this model to loving yourself,
Mm.
yeah, I know I have a lot of resistance to really taking on having my unique gifts manifest in the world.
Right.
I kind of have to be dragged kicking and screaming into that. And that's one of the things that Carol does for me.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Paul, I think we've nailed it. I think we stuck the landing.
Wow.
Beautiful. What a pleasure it is to be your friend and to have this conversation with you both today and over these last 15 years. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a great time. Bill, you have ridden with me through uh, a an incredible time of my life. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. And I'll say it again. I really want to honor the contributions you've made to those who have been in grief and now to those who are in relationship and wanting to do it better. So thank you for bringing your gifts, even if it's kicking and screaming.
Well, thank you for creating this little space to do that
Okay.
for me and others to do this in.
All right.
It's a huge, huge conversation.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Take care, my friend. Be well.
Be well, you too.